Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Lawless Podcast. And today I'm joined by
Bella,
Abby,
Mariella.
And today we're going to be talking about a wide range of things, really. Not really one topic, quite a few things. I think, girls, do you have a question for me at the start?
Yeah, well, I think you asked quite a lot of questions to your different guests that you have on, but I think, you haven't really answered many yourself. So what made you want to set up the podcast? And what would you say is what do you want to achieve with this podcast?
Okay, so I actually set up the podcast because I was at work and my friend told me, he said, Alex, you speak quite a lot. And I was like, do I actually? And he's like, yeah. I was like, okay. And then he goes, you should probably set up one of them podcasts or something. I'm like, okay. And then here we are, basically.
Wow.
And it kind of evolved from that and become something where a platform for me to spread messages that need to be spread. So like today, we're going to talk about quite a few deep topics, but this sort of thing does need to be said and it could really help people. So I think that is the more sort of deeper reason, other than some lad in Sainsbury's telling me, yeah, you speak a lot, mate, you should do a podcast.
Fair enough. And do you have any goals for the podcast?
I do. The goals I have are just to basically reach as many people as possible and just to kind of
get famous.
Not really to get famous, just to get to a level where we can just influence as many lives as possible in a positive way.
Fair enough.
That's the main sort of reason, yeah. So, girls, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, what's all going on? Mariella, you want to start us off?
Yeah. Okay, I study history. And I like to play sport and theatre, and that's really it.
So how's history going so far?
Have I started? I probably should have started. I haven't yet. But it's here.
It's early days.
It is. The lectures are quite quick. I think I'm going to have to get used to taking very quick notes, and I haven't got my head around like that. But sounds interesting. Topics sound interesting. And we're in Durham.
We're in Durham. We're here. Duzza. We're here.
I'm doing history in Durham. What?
That's it. What's going on? How are we here? What's going on, But yeah, Abby, what about you?
Okay, I'm studying physics. Really fun.
She's a woman in STEM.
She's a woman in STEM.
Woman in STEM.
Power.
It's one of our topics for
Kind
today.
of an unknown fact. A woman in STEM.
No, never thought we'd see one, but here we are.
Never ever, no.
So, yeah.
Why do you do what about physics? Really?
Yeah.
Why physics?
I don't know.
Why physics? Yeah.
Literally because my best subject.
How
and
many-
now I'm
yeah.
stuck.
How many in your course would you say? What's the ratio between female and men in
See,
your
I
course?
thought it was
would you
kind of
say?
even, but then there's definitely more men. It's probably 60-40.
See, that's
So
better.
it's kind of- it's better.
That's better than some A level
not bad,
classes.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember you saying that in one of your labs.
Yeah, my labs are 5 of us, completely girl.
Really?
How does that make you feel?
Powerful, no, I'm joking. No,
I own that then. I'm the girl, they're the lads, I run that lab.
my lab, no, living with it.
You're just all sub-characters, mate, I'm the main character. This lab, yeah, you're looking at me. I can see you looking at me, yeah, I know what you're doing, come on.
No.
Checking out the pipette work,
No, I
come on.
need some friends, so...
If you do physics at Durham, hold on her line.
She's already put Tinder out. It's fine. She wants a guy that can solve a Rubik's cube. It's okay.
Yeah, her chat line is just shouting at people in clubs that she's a woman in STEM.
And the men are very impressed by that, and yeah.
Do you
We'll
find
get onto clubs
do you
later,
think
though, won't
people
we?
are intimidated by it? Because obviously it is a very academic
I
subject.
don't know.
Fucking hell, yeah.
I don't know, it's not something I do advertise that much, believe it or not.
Keep it
That
quiet,
is
hold
a
your
lie.
cards to your
Just like to
chest.
make sure that is a lie. That it is her only personality
Yeah,
trait.
my
really.
personality trait is women in STEM. But
Yeah, that's okay.
But I remember though, when you talk to people though, it's often a thing where you ask somebody oh, what course do you think I'm studying? And has anybody ever said
Has anyone
physics
guessed?
to you?
Yeah,
No.
true.
Exactly. Do you think that's
They are shocked.
what do they often? What's the most
They
common
go
thing?
English, geography, classics.
Lovely.
And do you think that's because of your gender? Or?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they'll instantly just assume you're doing them subjects
Yeah.
because you're a girl. Yeah, that's
Well, you
mad.
just think of A-level classes. In my school anyway, English, it was probably 70% girls, 70% boys, and then physics, my friend was only 1 or 2 girls in the whole A-level
all my
class.
classes, there were 4 girls, and then
Wow.
50
So it really does make an impression of
Yeah.
Exactly. There is that clear gender divide between subjects. And
Yeah, definitely.
obviously that's got to change because we need more men in sort of them sort of subjects and more women in them other subjects. Mix it up.
Get more women in
I think
STEM.
we have enough men in history and stuff. I think it's just women need to feel encouraged to get into
Yeah, I think so.
more male-dominated.
I think it's
STEM
getting
subjects.
there. Well, It will.
Well, I think it's at the moment it is, but if you do look at the people that are the top in their field at the moment,
Yeah.
it is predominantly
Like when
men.
you said, actually, can you name another female scientist
that's
role
not
model
Marie
that's not
Curie?
Marie Curie? I was like, I honestly cannot
No,
think of a
Exactly.
female scientist.
She's the
there.
go-to, but if you think about other, I mean, think about it. If you were to name a modern physicist, Brian Cox, you
Yeah.
could get that
Bang.
instantly.
Exactly,
Yeah.
straight away.
Name a female physicist,
Shit, put me on stop. Oh.
aside from Abby, obviously.
We have one right here, apart from
Myself.
her. Who knows?
My lecturer.
Wow. The woman who runs it.
Actually, sorry, that's the case in actually most things, though.
Yeah.
Like literally, all the leading male historians are male. Like when you look at the reading list,
yeah.
it actually stands out when it's a
Always
woman.
women.
You know, international relationship as a discipline, I was reading the other day, only 8% of scholars are sort of black or ethnic background. 8%.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, it's even worse in my.
Yeah.
So I'm doing.
This is Bella.
Hi, I'm doing archaeology and ancient history, and one of the actual things that we did talk about in one of my very first lectures was the lack of diversity in my field. Because if you think, obviously ancient history is the Department of Classics. When you think of classics as a subject, you often think of older, white, middle-class men who went to, public school,
Yeah.
and that they're trying to change that. They have a whole topic that we talked about how to decolonize
That was us in
archaeology
history.
as a
Decolonise
discipline,
history as well.
and how to decolonize, and also take away these perceptions that these kind of subjects are only available to a specific group of people.
That's
Because
true, because actually there's
edu-
like there's two aspects of it. It's the people who are in the field itself and also the subjects you study.
Yeah.
So I know the history department, I can tell that they've been trying hard to like expand the syllabus. There's definitely a rise in non-European topics because it has always been so Eurocentric.
Mm-hmm.
We're literally learning about that, how like even when, for example, we learn about Britain, it's always just referring to England. It like the field is so structured and it hasn't changed in so many years that we really need to.
So one of the things I was reading is
Find out
a
there.
book by James Whiteley about classical archaeology in Greece, is that a lot of Greek people don't feel a connection to their own history
Oh, wow.
because, France and Germany and especially Britain have sort of taken the ancient culture and have almost, if you look at something like the Elgin Marbles, we've almost taken this culture and tried to sort of find our own roots in it, when really we don't actually have them. So a lot of actual Greek people don't feel that connection to their own culture because it has been so shaped by scholars from different countries.
I thought you were going to say taken their artifacts. That's what I say. Yeah,
yeah.
Go to the
British Museum.
Well,
Oh.
that was something that my
It's just
professor
Greece.
talked about in one of my lectures. She said, what do we think about, who? So if we look at these artifacts, who do they actually belong to? And everybody in my lecture, nobody said anything because everyone was too scared to either have one opinion or the other. And I think
Yeah.
these are debates
That's
we
a big
should be
thing.
having. I'm not going to reveal my opinion.
Nah,
This is a public platform, and I'm going to offend whoever.
We're going to go on to sort of like women's issues and what you guys think are important topics that we need to kind of discuss. So just kind of going into that, like we'll go into the topic of like marriage. What are your guys' takes on marriage? Are you sort of pro, for? What do you think?
I honestly just find the topic of like the actual concept of marriage so bizarre, so backward. And I know that civil marriages are a thing, but even the fact that so many things are kind of denied from a couple if they're not legally binded together is ridiculous, as if the only way you can express that you were with someone is through legal means. So like, first of all, the concept of actually legally binding yourself to someone, and then divorces can be so difficult. Like, it's literally just a right. If you don't want to be with someone, it's so bizarre. And then also the practices, I think, of marriage seem very backward to me as well. I know that my dad would always say, oh, I want to have my little girl down the aisle, but, I think there's very archaic, there's an archaic background to all the things that happen, like the practices in the ceremony itself. And I don't know if I'd want to participate in that if I did get married. But
Fair play. So where do you think your beliefs on marriage have come from? Just like your sort of background, stuff you've read? What do you think?
I think it's just literally thinking about it. I think it's also attending marriages, and you actually see it happen, and when you see them, dad hand her hand over to her fiance, it's very symbolic, and it's very obvious what it, like, the connotations of it are.
Because I agree with Mariella. I was going to say that I think a lot of the symbolism behind marriage is based in a lot of very sexist practices, and like Mariella said, you are given as the bride, you are given away, and that comes from the idea that you go from being under your father's influence to being under your husband's influence.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that if you are given, it's got connotations of being almost like your property.
Yeah.
And it takes any autonomy away from the actual person. It makes, if you are given away, you are the passive person in that exchange. You are the one being given, you're not actively choosing. And I think the kind of connotations behind that are quite negative. And I think also, if you think about the whole symbolism behind a white dress and the idea that it's connected to purity and virginity, which I think is quite outdated. And I think it is changing. I mean, you see people wearing whatever they want, but it is still that idea, white wedding.
It was Queen Victoria, wasn't it? I don't know if she did it for that reason, but I think it was
What
just...
started the white dress?
Yeah, it wasn't a thing.
Wow.
People would, before Queen Victoria, they wore their best dress, basically. So that would normally be golds or purples, because that was the most expensive fabric. And then Queen Victoria decided, I actually don't know the reasons, it probably might be linked to that, but I think it's more of like a power thing as well. But then it was, and I think from there, obviously, with a lot of literature anyway, white is always associated with the things Bella's talking about.
Purity,
Exactly.
Miss Historian, go on.
But it's interesting how different marriage customs are, like, across the world. I think
True.
I could be wrong with this, but I know there's somewhere where they wear black to weddings and white to funerals. I'm not sure where that is.
Oh, I feel like I've heard.
But also, I mean, I don't want to keep bringing up, like, ancient... Like,
No, go on,
cultures.
go on, of
Sorry,
course, it's
that's
fine.
what in ancient Sparta, when a woman got married, she cut her hair and dressed in men's clothes.
Oh, really?
Because in Sparta, a man would take an older lover,
Okay.
and so it was to make sure that they felt more comfortable, which is, we think that's very strange.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting how these customs change. And there's a...
I was just about to say, like, to reiterate, I was talking about Christian wedding. I think that's so bad that I literally only think wedding is that. I forget. So there's so many different types of weddings and how that happens. So when I'm talking about archaic practices, I'm always referring to what I've grown up with in a Christian church.
I think it's nice to make that distinction, because also I think, to actually have because for some people, marriage can mean two things. Like, I think for some people, it's all about the actual ceremony, and for some people, it's about the legal aspect. Because to legally marry someone, you don't need a wedding. You only need to go and sign a document in a registry.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, that's not the important thing. The important thing is the ceremony. So it really depends, I think, on what you want beliefs are.
And then some people just want the party.
Yeah.
I just want
That's what Abby wants.
What are your thoughts on marriage?
I quite like the idea of marriage. But, like, I don't know, I don't need a big wedding. Like, I'm more than happy to elope.
Elope.
Where's the place in Scotland where you go?
I'm
Gretna Green.
Gretna Green.
Yeah, she'll be there.
That's very Pride and
Up to Gretna
Prejudice. Miss Lydia Bennett here.
God.
Oh, anyway.
I think also marriages are, like, the actual wedding ceremonies, I think, are a very lovely way to bring families together.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Because my mum got married in August this year,
Yeah.
and it was so lovely seeing family members from my stepdad's side that I'd never met before, and it's that lovely idea that you are welcomed into a new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is weird for me anyway. My family, I think, are very far apart. So it's weird how we only ever come together literally for weddings and funerals.
Because I've only ever been
It's
to one
one thing.
wedding. So
Really?
so I've never really I've never been to a family wedding.
Yeah, so that familial event that brings everyone together, no matter how far away they are. And also another, I think, kind of interesting aspect is the sort of accountability, because if you think about how the church is structured, groom's like family on the left, bride on the right, it's everyone's watching you get married. So because of that, it means you're like less likely to leave or sort of divorce, because everyone knows you're together. You're kind of in front of all of your loved ones, and if you are truly in love, then that's a good thing as well, because you want to be like, look, guys, in front of all of my family members, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
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 And marriage seems like a very final thing.
Yeah.
And I think...
And that's what, I just remember arranged marriages and things like that, that's still happening today.
Yeah.
That, if, the fact that someone to say, look, I almost need a young girl, for example, someone almost as a sex slave, I need them for sex, to go through marriage shows the power it has, because they think the first thing we'll do is arrange a marriage.
But also, I do think that it is important to make the distinction between an arranged marriage and a forced marriage.
True.
Because in a lot of communities...
Oh, true, I meant forced marriage.
Arranged marriages.
True.
I mean, there have been a lot of women that have said, actually, they wanted an arranged marriage because they believe that their parents actually
trust their judgment.
They trust their judgment.
Yeah.
In a lot of cultures, you would depend
That's true.
on your family and you trust them, and you find a lot of... Well, I've read things about women that have said that they actually feel that they found love more organically because there's not that pressure of wanting... You both know what the other one wants.
Yeah.
And you have that... you learn to love them.
The boundaries are already quite set.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
My drama teacher in year 8 said this really mad thing. I remember at the time hearing him going, what are you on about? And he said that arranged marriages are better because you start apart and get closer together over time.
Yeah.
Whereas the opposite is for normal marriages, you start really close and eventually like fall apart.
Yeah.
So that was really weird, but now kind of looking at it, it kind of makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah. But I do think saying if it might possibly be harder to divorce if you've been in an arranged marriage, because it could almost be seen as a sign of disrespect towards your parents.
Yeah,
who
it's not just you
arranged
two
this.
involved, is it?
Yeah.
It's a familial sort of
I think
ties.
generally if you can, meet someone not in an arranged situation, I personally think that's best, but I will never be in an arranged marriage, so I can't give a full I can't give a point of view.
Yes, I think a lot of this...
So just
Anyway.
just to move on to something a little bit more topical to us in Dozo.
We're all getting married next week, actually.
That's it. The marriages are arranged. We're ready. So just going on to like sort of catcalling as a topic. Have you guys? What are your experiences? What do you think about it? Where does it come from? Yeah, what are your thoughts?
So we were talking about this earlier because I don't know if to call it catcalling
Dog barking.
dog calling, because on Thursday, these group of lads slowed their car down next to me while I was literally just walking, and I thought they were going to ask for directions, and they all just barked at me, which at the time was quite scary because it was quite sudden.
Yeah.
But now I almost think it's funny, but I feel like I shouldn't think that because it is
weird, isn't it?
an objectification. But
Yeah. I so vividly remember actually, I was in Oxford and I saw a girl, she was cycling and she had books in her bag, so she was obviously a student, cycling back from a lecture, wrapped up in a coat, and some guys did the exact same thing. They pulled, she was on the road, and then the guys pulled down and they just started whistling, saying, "Get in my car." And I'm like, this is like, she literally was doing nothing. She was showing no skin. She was clearly just an educated woman. What else can we do?
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting also that you raised the point that she wasn't showing any skin.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, isn't it? I think it's interesting that a lot of us would say, "Oh, but she was showing skin or she wasn't showing skin," when actually in reality, what she was wearing should have no difference.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
I was about
It's
to
got nothing to do with what you wear because that's your choice. How somebody reacts to that is their own problem.
Yeah, 100%.
When I was about to tell my story now, I was about to go, I was wearing a skirt from school, walking home.
School uniform.
It was
That's a
actually
big thing as well, isn't
I was going to say, I've been
think
catcalled
it's
more in my school uniform by older men.
Really?
which is
That's so
disgusting.
weird.
No, actually, that's true because I went to school in Wolverhampton for 5 years, and I'm not even kidding. Every assembly, there was an alert from either our school or a local school that was linked to the police saying a girl had been followed home.
We had that.
Literally, this is not even exaggerating. Every week, like
so bad.
people in my year group followed home from school, touched up on the bus.
We had that. We
Every
had
week.
reminders pretty much every week, like you said. Don't walk in any less than groups of 3.
Really?
Don't walk late at night. And it shouldn't have to be the young girls that have to be scared walking to and from school, which is a place of education that they should feel is a safe place. We've had in my old school, we had a case of 2 girls from a completely different school having to run into our school to hide.
Even
which
then,
is obviously-
sometimes they don't.
Yeah, but it's interesting that a guy would respect a man he's never met more than a woman that he's right in front of him that he's
having a conversation with.
Yeah.
I remember I was at the pub once with my friends, and so there were 3 of us, and 2 of us had gone to the toilet together, and so my one friend was sat alone, and some guy went over to her and was like, can I get your Snapchat? But like, don't worry, if you don't want to give it to me, I totally understand, I respect it. And the thing is that she clearly was saying no, and he keeps pestering her until one of our friends, like at another table, saw this happen and swept her away. But then when the 3 of us were all back at that table, he came back and wouldn't take no for an answer. Even after saying, I totally respect if you say no.
Well,
Actually,
that's obviously just a lie.
Yeah, exactly. It's a line.
But I think that's reminded me of actually another story this summer.
Go on.
And the power, honestly, of girl power and this bond, because I was in Richmond and it was like 9 o'clock. I was reading because I was waiting for someone. So I was reading in like a park by the river, and then a guy started talking to me, and like an old guy, and he started talking like about how I should make a list of the kind of perfect guy I want, and he was like lecturing about stuff, and I was like, okay. And then another guy came over, put his arm around me, and then started like also asking me really intrusive questions, and like started putting his hand in weird places. This was, and then thank God there was a girl and a boy that were my age who were walked past, and this girl instantly saw I was uncomfortable, I was in a bad situation, came up to me and said like, Jessica, over here now, do you want to go? She knew the situation, she realised it, she came up with an excuse to get me out of there, and then got me out.
The girls are quite good at doing
It's so it's more common than you think.
If your inkling is something's not right, you might as well trust
say
it.
something, because they could turn around and be like, oh no, actually I'm fine.
Exactly.
Because you, like, honestly, I don't know how I would have got out of that situation. These 2 guys started arguing about me in front of me, and they were like touching me both, like there was 2 separate men, and thank God this girl came and saved me. Because
And the thing is, girls are very good at recognising when a girl needs help.
Yeah.
They can see, because the thing is, most girls have experienced it, they know what a girl's face will look like if they're uncomfortable.
Yeah. Anyway, girl power.
Wow. And I think that's a big message for lads and girls listening. Just realise that your ability to influence situations is great, and just because you're an individual, it doesn't mean you're powerless. Just as Mariella was saying there, like, if that person doing that had such an impact, and you remember that to this day, like that happening. So if you ever see anything like that, do something. No, you have to do something, because it's your responsibility to do something. And just don't think, oh yeah, it's not my responsibility, someone else will do it. And if everyone has that attitude, then no one's going to help anyone. So you need to be there, even for people you don't know, because think, that could be your sister, that could be your brother. Just really see it as that, and then, help people.
As a man, Alex, would you say if you saw something like that happening, would you intervene?
Yeah.
Or would you?
I had before, yeah. Like, this was back home with a guy. It was mainly like a bullying sort of thing. It wasn't the same sort of situation, but I was on a run, and there was this bigger lad bullying this smaller kid. And obviously I'm quite tall, so I was running past. I was wearing like some like little sort of like tight thing, yeah. And this kid, I was like, "Oi, stop bullying him!" And he was like, he's look on his face was amazing. And the little kid was like, "Yeah, he showed you." No, it was really good, because the kid was like, his face went from like proper upset to like, yeah, fuck you, mate. So like, again, it goes back to like you.
More like Alex Lawson.
Alex is so...
Oh, so humble, he's so humble.
But do you think some of these situations is ever just a case of men genuinely just reading the room wrong and getting it wrong, or do you think they actively know that they're harassing somebody? Like, where do you think the line is?
I know what you mean.
So it depends on the individual. Like, you can't. It's going to be a sort of like situation by situation. But on the whole, I'd like to think it's just men reading the room wrong. But equally, there are some fucked up lads out there who don't know what the social cues are, or just don't give a shit about the social cues, and they're just so egotistical. They just go, "This is what I want. I don't disregard everyone else and get what I want." So again, it depends on the individual, but I'd like to think that on the whole it is just people not being so socially calibrated, so they can't understand that, someone not making eye contact with you, someone not really responding to your questions is signals to tell you that it's not on.
Like you said, as individuals, also the person receiving it as well, because some people just have different boundaries. I know I would say I'm very happy with touch, like normally. I know some people definitely aren't, but I would say go with the mindset, presume this person does not has boundaries which, don't touch. I have my space until you get to know them better. Because obviously just some people will perceive, like some person with me, enrichment, they might have felt less uncomfortable because they're more fine with that. I'm not saying it shouldn't, obviously it should not have happened.
Oh, yeah.
But like it's also perception of the person themselves. So I would say always presume, obviously.
But also
with friendship as well, just presume someone doesn't like touch.
Yeah.
They are, quite closed off. They're closed until you know them better as a person.
Yeah, until they say they want it.
But also, I do think that there are individuals out there that completely understand these social cues, but they do it because it's a power kick and they like to make somebody else feel uncomfortable because it makes them feel like they have the power in the situation. It's a case of
deliberate
status and...
Yeah.
Lots of guys are very much aware of all this stuff, but they just refuse to believe that it could be them. Yeah.
It's not me.
I don't make girls uncomfortable. I'm a gentleman. It's
Exactly.
well,
They love it. They want you,
Obviously that will probably...
All the girls want me. They'd never deny me. Why is this girl not denying me?
Or like if
Must be something going
they've
wrong.
been made aware of situations, they will deny that they were ever acting in that way.
Yeah.
I think also it is a case of you have to read the social cues because very few times someone will openly say, you are making me feel uncomfortable, because it takes a lot of confidence to be able to do that in a
But
conversation.
if you're in a club and a girl is being moved away from you by her friends, that could be a cue. Just maybe that she's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And she's
Just
not
maybe.
going to tell you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Eye contact. I think eye contact is so important. If somebody's not even able to look you in the eyes, that shows that they're uncomfortable.
Yes, every time I've not been comfortable around a guy,
Or when
my
they-
eyes are all over
Or when they stray to obviously someone they
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that, I
And they're
think
looking
that's so
for people as
striking.
well, like.
But this is also very much linked to spiking, which I think we're
Yeah, so we was going to go on to that. So, what are your girls' takes on spiking? So, what would you say the causes of spiking are?
So, I think also just to give a bit of context.
Yeah, of course.
Recently, there have been a lot of cases. I mean, we're talking in Durham, but I think universities across the UK,
Yeah.
Now as freshers,
a lot of spiking. A lot of spiking.
I'm
and
hearing about a spiking at least once a night.
Even
clubs
other
have
different
opened again after a long time being shut. It's all been...
But also, even one of the colleges in Durham, their bar has been closed because of so many reports of spiking. And I know that Platinate, the newspaper company here, are doing a report on spiking because it is such a problem here,
Yeah.
and it needs to be addressed. But I think the problem comes from men that feel so either just that they have to resort to something as disgusting as spiking somebody
Yeah.
to be able to have it's mind-boggling.
It's baffling. And also, I think probably a lot of you, audience, have seen...
Our listeners.
No, well, for me anyway, on my Instagram stories, you've probably seen the story of the girl who actually got injected as well. That I don't know if she knew this was.
There's
And it's been going around that now, for example, there's lots of techniques that obviously we shouldn't have to use, but there are techniques to prevent spiking happening, keep your hand on your drink,
Like covering the
etc.
cup.
Yeah.
Or even
And
just,
now,
just shots.
Yeah. And now there's new means of kind of making a girl unconscious that makes us even more powerless because we literally have no control. And I've seen that there's I think I've signed it. It's the there's a what's it called? Petition about having stricter checks to get in a club.
Yeah.
Because you literally, to be fair, and I it's true that you can just walk in. Someone can
With a
walk in
needle.
with
anything.
a knife, anything.
Also, what's interesting is that I don't drink in clubs, and so I always thought I would be safe from that kind of thing. But suddenly, there's another level of vulnerability, that the idea that somebody could just inject you, because you can there are precautions you can take. Obviously, not all of them are effective, and you shouldn't have to do them.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that if you don't do these things, you deserve to get spiked, because that's absolutely not true. And I do think that's actually something to address.
Yeah.
There's a lot of posters, PSAs that seem to be based on don't get spiked instead of don't spike.
Yeah.
And it
Why are
makes
you
it
to
seem,
blame? That's what you're the victim.
and it makes it
ones that
seem
have to
like
do
if you
everything.
don't do this,
It's almost your fault.
you
that got
deserve to get
spiked.
spiked, or it's almost like you let yourself get spiked.
Yeah.
And as bad as it is, though, spiking's never going to stop, so we just have to make sure we're as safe as we can be.
Well, it
It's
can.
so-
It stops with the drug dealers that are supplying people with this stuff.
Yeah, that is true.
So I think that's a very important question to be asked: is who is to blame, the person doing it or the dealer, and who is more to blame out of them?
There has to be a person actively going out.
Actively going out.
Because they first of all seeked.
Yeah.
They sought
They've sourced it themselves.
and then they've actually done the. And then also,
What do you do after
luckily,
spiking?
I've not heard of anything so far, because luckily the spikings I've heard of,
Maybe people
the
were at
girls,
home, yeah.
the girls or people have noticed. But you always have to remember, it's not just the spiking. There's,
It's what happens next, isn't it, as well?
There's always the reason why you get spiked is for a normally amount to be able to have full control of a female body without any resistance.
Yeah.
But I read-
And that's the thing. And you, obviously, if that's someone's aim,
Do we need to
terrifying,
have
though, isn't
to
it?
have
have to
trigger
blame
warning?
them.
Oh yeah, probably trigger warning
yes,
at the
that's
beginning
so
of this.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
You
don't
say
know.
that. But I read an article that a woman wrote where she went with her gay male friend to a male gay bar. And so she felt she was absolutely safe, because obviously you go to a gay bar, you expect that people there to obviously not be interested in women if it's a male gay bar.
Exactly.
And that's where she got spiked, and she actually did end up
wow.
getting, she was raped. And she felt that afterwards she struggled to go to the police because she felt she wasn't conscious for it. She didn't feel she had enough to actually deserve
Enough
to go
evidence,
to the police.
Wow.
But not even enough evidence. She felt that because she wasn't immediately
doesn't remember
traumatized
it.
by it,
Yeah.
she felt she didn't deserve to do it, which is horrific. The idea that you don't feel like a almost worthy enough victim that
To
you
go to the
would
police.
contemplate
That
not
was
going
that
to
was
the
fair.
police.
That was me with upskirting though, because
It's terrifying.
Because I almost took the mindset, it's only a picture. I won't ever have to kind of face the consequences again. It's really weird. I randomly just get reminded, oh wow, this guy might just still have a picture of me and up my skirt, and who knows what he's done with that picture? Has he distributed it? Does he use it for personal pleasure? I don't know, but it's weird that it always comes back and randomly haunts me.
But
And
no,
and-
you shouldn't. You
Exactly.
shouldn't have to feel like that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, so many girls out there will not even know this happened to them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's
So
true.
many.
Yeah, they won't be aware it's happened. That's even more scary. Like,
Do you know, I mean, I think it's interesting as well to get a male perspective on this as well. Are you aware of a lot of like how common this is for girls, or is it more when girls talk about it, you're surprised?
to be honest with you, I was
Yeah.
acutely aware, but I think the fact that you've said this now, for me and our listeners, will really open their eyes, because people they know it happens, but the magnitude and the extent of the victimhood and how many people are actually victims of this sort of thing, like, it's amazing, really. It's just like you don't expect it. And then, when it's put into perspective, you think, like, this isn't a sort of epidemic, like, this is happening on a massive societal level. Like, and I think something I would really like to discuss is the mindset of someone who spikes someone. Like, what is the thought process? How have they got to the point mentally where they can justify doing that to another person?
They are.
So I find that very difficult to get my head around.
It's just the
but
worst.
I think that it's not really about the actual sexual gratification, because I think sex is enjoyable because it's a mutual pleasure that you're sharing with somebody.
Yeah.
But in this, it is completely one-sided.
It's a
So
twisted
it can't
mind.
be. It
but
can't
no,
be.
but some people do enjoy that.
But it's the power.
Because
Yeah,
They
exactly.
get
because they
sexual
have
gratification
the
from the
idea.
power, not from the actual act of. It's the
Yeah.
idea. I mean, obviously, I don't know
Yeah,
because
I think
I
thank
don't
goodness.
understand that mindset.
I literally, when you asked that question, I was like, literally, I can't fathom. But I think also always has to play for fact as well. Some people just think they can't chat up a girl, or they can't.
But imagine
Or
being that
they
desperate.
can't do it organically. They feel like, or they've had failures in the past. They rely, and then they go to, they go to source, which is so deprived.
But I think that comes to as well, which is another big topic, which I don't think we'll have much time to talk about. But incels and the forums online. that
Bloody hell.
incels, I could
Yes.
talk about.
they get down this
Ever.
rabbit hole, and it's a almost like a kind of a sense
That's
of
so
mental
true.
rot, where you get to the point where you're in this sort of like self-perpetuating cycle of just degrading yourself and other men.
Yeah.
And you look at these forums and you see pictures where men are posting photos of themselves and other men are commenting, "This is the reason why you'll never be loved, because your forehead is too big." And it's got nothing to do. It's got nothing to do with the fact that you just might not have worked out a way to, effectively communicate in public, or you just need to put yourself out a bit more.
But I think it's
And then
more because they convince themselves things of incels. They've got the terminology.
woman's fault.
No, it's Chads and Stacey's. It's not just the women's fault.
Fuck's sake.
So
And
this is
Becky's and all
what.
that.
Yeah. So the incels they tell themselves Chads are like
And there's the red pill.
the
and all that.
Red and blue pill,
stereotypical.
yeah,
sorry,
that sort of stuff.
Yeah, stereotypical.
Your jocks, your nerds.
There's
There's
Alex
drawing.
Roar's here.
There's that
Here's a Chad.
I'm sure an incel it stands for so for those of you that don't know,
thank you, let's clarify.
basically incel stands for involuntary celibate, and it's a community mostly online of men that, to put it simply and bluntly, can't have sex or don't have sex with women, and they blame a lot of it
blame
comes down
mostly
to the
women.
hatred of women.
Yeah, or they
And they
convince
believe-
they've turned to the fact that it's women's
right.
fault that they don't choose someone like them, and instead they go for the
Fragile male
stereotypical.
ego.
Yeah, and it's the idea that since women have gained more independence and more autonomy of themselves and their own decisions, that has disrupted a system that has served to benefit men for the last however long.
And subsequently, they normally hold very backward views about what a woman's place is, what society
So
is.
there's like stuff like this. I'll put this in the show notes so
Yeah.
you guys can, on YouTube. It'll be on there so you can have a look at it. But it's this thing like you've got the virgin walk, and it's just like all these different things like back slouched. It's just like kind of like caricaturing what they'd expect this
It's the
person
idea
to be.
your whole life and your whole persona and your whole being is completely related around the fact that you can't have sex, and they believe that affects your physical appearance, your
Mental state,
your
everything.
mental state, even the trajectory of your life, that you won't be as successful, that you won't be as happy.
And it's dangerous because there's the cases. There's been 2 mass shootings by incels whose motivation is the incel community and
the
their
one
perception
recently.
of society and
one
like how
recently,
it's
the guy
society's
from the UK.
against them.
Was that the Plymouth one?
Yeah.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Plymouth
He
guy.
identified as an incel.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's so true.
Why do you identify as an incel? Like, why do you let that lead your life?
Why would you want to be associated
What it
with
is,
that?
I think it comes down
it's
to
a
a form of
very-
victimhood, that you're able to blame other people, and they have these views and they're trying to find a way to justify them.
I think it's also must reiterate it's a very modern type of community because it's basically all online. They get to these people, these incels, they get to know each other very well, but they'll never meet each other. They're just
they surround
talking
themselves.
online. They're talking online, complaining. It's a whole, and that's why ideas spread.
No
so
girls ever
quickly.
talk to me. And it goes back to that thing where like, this is a big toxic thing about online and social media generally, is how it creates these echo chambers where the only people I'm talking with are people who share the same views as me, and therefore I believe that view is my entire world perception.
100%.
And especially with this, that's why it's so toxic, because you go, day 15 at school, no girls talk to me, and all the other incels on the group will be like, yeah, same with me guys, aren't women shit, and that little idea perpetuates, and the more people reinforce it, and then it's your internal belief in your mind, and then you're like, what the fuck can I do? No, women want me, and then, eventually it gets to a stage where you do something so drastic and so fucked up that you resort to violence.
The internet is
And it's
crazy
violence
place.
against women, it can be against themselves, because I think a lot of these men are in such a, and it's boys as well, it can be young boys.
Yeah.
And it's, they can get into very, very depressive states of mind.
yeah.
Because it's
Where
everything is online.
They're already clearly insecure to even resort to going to these communities, and then if they're just getting knocked down.
Yeah, but the problem is that these a lot of people are saying now that these men shouldn't be publicly shamed. They should be helped.
Yeah,
there should
definitely.
be available resources to help these men who are before they actually.
As a preventative sort of thing.
You have to
Also,
educate people. You can't
don't
because
take
if
the
you shame
whole mindset that I don't know, because I don't. There's a Jubilee video on YouTube. Jubilee's like one of my favourite. And it was like an ask an incel.
the guy,
And he was like, he went to the extent of saying things like, a woman shouldn't be president because we don't have the mind. We're too emotional.
So they just hate women.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because they blame women
it's like
for
a
their-
process. It starts from hating particular women for not choosing them, and then it kind of goes to also attractive men who they feel like are stealing the women. They always go for the looks instead of these men who are like, we're the good guys.
But they rate
men,
and then it goes further.
So it's never a self-hatred. They see themselves as victims.
They do as well. And what it is they hate themselves because they feel that they are ugly and they are they don't have the same conversational skills as other men, and it's very, very competitive. And you get on these sites where almost men are competing to see who has it worse instead, and who is the biggest victim.
Yeah, actually, that's also one thing they also hate as well is what they see as modern dating culture, and especially dating apps, which I think is another conversation.
That's another topic. But
And how because I would say most dating apps, it is about your looks. It's like
Tinder is holding
literally, you say yes or no based on one picture.
Left, right.
And like to that extent, I maybe not agree with them, but I'm like, yeah, fair. We should never ever judge someone based wholly on what they look like and see past that. And that is another conversation, I think.
But it's also interesting the way I read something about the way that dating apps are structured visually mirror the way that online shopping, like online shops are visually available. So they sort of, in this article, they reached the conclusion that dating apps actually can harm the relationships between people because it's essentially you are shopping for a person.
Yeah.
You are dismissing people instantly and accepting the ones that you believe in that moment are what you're looking for. And I mean, people do find love. Obviously.
Actually, also, to be fair, this is so niche, and I don't know. There's a TikToker called webkinny.
Oh my gosh!
I know, and she's honestly the sweetest person. And there's one video I so vividly remember watching. She's having a little breakdown, and she was like, "I'm not beautiful," and we're like, "No." And then she's also like, the only guys I've ever had sustainable relationships are the ones that I meet online because they don't see me first. They get to know me and my personality before they see what I am like in real life because they wouldn't approach me in real life. And that's also there's another flip to the there's another side of the coin that I don't know. It is hard. Like you're talking about clubs and stuff and.
Because that is all visual, isn't it, in the club?
It's so visual. Because you can't hear people.
No,
the conversations you have in the club are so basic.
But also, would you
what are you
say
studying? What's your name?
Do you know what? I had an interesting conversation with someone.
It is so visual.
But also, would you say that the purpose of going to a club is just to pick people up? Because I know personally, I go to a club to just dance and have a good time.
No, I think true, but also
Depends on the intention.
Also, I do want to say really quickly, if there is anybody listening that wants to look more into incels, there is a YouTube channel called ContraPoints, and they have a very long, in-depth
We'll put a link.
thing about incels, which is actually it's actually very educational, and it doesn't because there is a lot of stuff online. Just I know to come back to the incels really quickly, that is aggressively shaming these men, and I think it's important to try, obviously not excuse, in no way excuse, but try to understand, because these men are not going to get better if they're continually shamed.
Yeah, or they'll isolate themselves more.
Yeah, and that only perpetuates the problem. Anyway, I just wanted to quickly say that.
And I think as well, going on what you just said there, it will create an us and them with them, and that creates the other. So everyone who's an incel will be forced into their own sort of like community and go, look at these people shaming us, we're the group. And then it's that, again, concept of other that comes back into it.
True,
but yeah. So what have we culture? So so going back to the club, so when you again, it depends on the individual, that's your point of what their intention of what they're doing in the club. So, most nights I go out just to, have a good time with my mates. But, you know, it depends, you know, how it all obviously like, pans out. But yeah. But going back to that, it's just like when you're in the club looking around, you see the way people kind of act, and you know, it's pretty fucked up sometimes. Right?
The amount of times I'll be dancing in a group and there'll just be a guy stood there.
Yes.
Just like chilling on his ones. Like,
Yeah, but
what
what's
are you doing?
interesting is a few girls I've been talking to have said this, is that often if you're with friends, you tend to almost dance like in a little tiny circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your little circle,
And
innit?
there's a point where I feel like pretty much probably every girl that's been to a club has had the moment where they can sense there is somebody very, very close behind them, but because you're so tight in where your group, you can't physically turn around, and it makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up.
You can tell they're
and
there,
it's a
yeah.
guy, and you can see, obviously, if you're the people you're dancing with, you can see them looking over your shoulder, and you can sense there is somebody very close pressed up behind you, but you can't get away. And obviously, some people, obviously, if they're attracted to the person behind them, that's how, you know, you can dance.
Fair play, that's how it goes, isn't
But
it?
if
Yeah.
not, it creates a very, very quickly, you can feel very claustrophobic and very trapped. And that's, I think some men use that as an excuse, use that kind of environment to,
Because it is so close, they can kind of get away with it, can't
Yeah.
they? Like,
Like, that when it's full, clubs are very, you know, they're very
can't really
suffocating.
back to back, isn't it? Most
It's
some clubs.
suffocating.
and some men use that as an excuse to get uncomfortably close
Yeah,
to
the whole
a girl
touching the
that
waist
can't
thing
get
when you're
away.
walking past
Yes.
as well.
Oh, excuse me, can I get past? And they grab
like-
your waist.
Yeah,
Like, you don't need to do that, you can get past.
You
I
quite
remember
easily
being
get
at a
past.
party once with someone did that to me. He was so uncomfortable. He was,
And also a club
hands
isn't
on the back.
because of the, you know, the music, you know, the how loud it is and the kind of environment. It's not a place where you can turn around and say, excuse me, can you move back? You can try,
Yeah.
but because it's so, you know.
Also, I think we always have to just throw in the perspective as well. Very often, a lot of people are intoxicated in a club, or women are intoxicated. That's always leaves people more vulnerable as well.
You know, one or two parties in that engagement could be, you know, fully
Especially if
gone.
someone's going to a club not drunk, actively seeking out people
Yeah.
Who
and
are
then-
drunk.
who are, or
The
not
power
even who are
dynamic.
drunk, or who are seeking out people, and then obviously people are
Already drunk in that
or
situation.
slightly, intoxicated. That's always the perspective as well, and it's also getting home, things like that. It's very easy also, well, with me anyway, to get isolated, to suddenly get
So you
split
get
up
lost
from
in the
your
club.
group,
Yeah.
and it is quite scary, especially as a girl, when you have lost your friends in a club.
And it's. I mean, I know like a few times. I feel like a lot of girls have you know had the piss taken out of them for going to the toilets together in a big group. But I.
Why you're going together?
Yeah,
It's a
I don't like-
safety thing.
It's,
It is a
and I
safety
don't think
thing.
a lot of men understand that it is completely a safety thing. Very few times, unless probably they're forced to, will a girl at night go somewhere alone
No.
because you are so much more vulnerable.
The amount of times we've been in clubs and we're having to text a friend because we've lost them. Mariella is always lost in clubs.
Yeah.
And we're like, Mariella, where are you?
Can I honestly, sometimes it's because I'm small and I can't
Yeah,
see you.
yeah.
Sometimes it is because someone has pulled me away.
Yeah.
Shit, yeah.
Like someone has pulled me away, and you just, and then once you're kind of almost locked in, it's very hard to
Yeah.
escape. Like if it is just you two facing each other, and then suddenly you're not feeling it. Sometimes it's so hard to leave in a club anyway.
Yeah.
So
You have to make
yeah.
excuses like, can I go to the toilet? I'm gonna go to the toilet, or my friends are over
Find a
there.
friend. That's
Yeah.
always, you always have to say, I need to find a friend.
Yeah.
I've got to find my friend. She's.
Well, I've got to
she's
go
drunk.
now or something like,
Yeah.
And I think a good little strategy that I've used in the past is you tell everyone you're going with like a place in the club or like outside. You go, if you do get lost, wait there and we'll come get you.
Actually, I haven't done that. And
No, we haven't.
I
We all have each other and like find my friend.
But when
my
you're in a
friend.
club though,
It's like a small environment, having like one spot where we go, meet near the bar if you get
Yeah, we
lost or
should do that.
something.
that's true.
So yeah, that could help with
Mr.
a few
Lawless with
people.
the tips.
But I don't know about you guys, but even in a club, if you have a guy friend with you, you feel so much safer because you know that if any, but that's it's no guarantee that that guy friend is gonna protect you if
Yeah.
something happened.
And I always feel safer going with a big group. Like one time, me and a friend went, just the two of us,
Yeah, that's.
and it was, we were very aware of everything going on around us.
I would. Yeah, I think it's nice to go in big groups.
Yeah. Because there's more people looking out for you, and like
Yeah.
you just know more people.
Oh yeah. So just going back to the topic of I think a lot of the stuff we've talked about goes back to sort of ego and power. A lot of these issues stem from that, I think, because it's either some individual on some level feeling themselves, just mainly for the topic of power, this is like feeling themselves not having power in their own lives and therefore have to resort to shit like this in order to get a sense that they are powerful.
I think this is another quite a big topic, but I think as well, I do think porn actually does come into this quite a lot.
100%.
Because a lot of porn is incredibly aggressive against women.
Yeah.
And it's often that the men are in positions of power over women. And with the amount of porn that people consume, it warps their view of what, what sex should look like and what is a healthy, relationship between people.
Yeah, also just with sex, often it is male pleasured. It is often female offering. It's just hard for a female to feel a lot of pleasure when you're having sex. It's interesting, and I think maybe that also is the stem. It's because it's men think that it's for them.
No, honestly, I think the big problem with porn as well is, as you girls have kind of said, is everything is perception. The stimuli you're bringing into your mind is going to alter and determine your perception. And if you are, say, on a regular basis, every single day watching porn, then that's going to cause your mind to go, okay, I have no other sort of reference point for what sex looks like because I haven't had sex yet because I'm 14.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, right, that's what it is. That's what it's meant to be. And then all these perceptions, these sort of beliefs, again, over time, internalise and become sort of core beliefs. And then you get put into this club environment at 18. And if you haven't already spoke to girls or spoke to female friends and gone, actually, no, that's fucked up. This is not the truth. This is just some weird thing that's exists for some reason. And then you're going to have that perception. And therefore, when you act in that manner, which is obviously very incongruent and wrong, you're not yourself going to know that it is wrong because all the reference points you have in your mind for what is right in a sexual environment is this thing that is wrong.
Yeah. And I think also a lot of men don't realise that porn is predominantly made by men for other men.
Yeah.
And then again, it's that
often
idea.
isn't what the sex going on is obviously not for a woman. It's a man.
And a lot of it's not
doing it for
real.
a man. Yeah, and that's also
It's not staged,
But at the end of the day, also these guys are professionals.
Yeah,
This is literally their job. They can't expect us, or we can't always do the things they can do. But obviously, if you don't know that,
Exactly.
you haven't tried it, then you
to put
wouldn't
it in
know.
a different context, you wouldn't say, this is really random, but you wouldn't say go to the circus, watch an acrobat and think, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I want to go do that straight away.
I'm going to go on a trapeze.
Yeah.
Nobody...
Let's buy a trapeze, let's start doing it. Jump through some hoop of fire. Yeah, I can do that now. I've seen someone do it, so that means I can do it.
Yeah.
But I think
It's the same
going back to
thing.
what you were saying about power and control, in a lot of those situations is the man has the power and control. And if that's the only thing that he's watching, his only perception that he has, he's going to enter into relationships and enter into, see his conversations with women as that being the end goal of him having power over her.
Exactly. And going back to the addictive side of porn, it is one of the most, if not the most addictive thing. It's up there with sort of heroin, sort of class A's, because of the way it's structured. You've got two actual core sort of animalistic reasons to be on Earth, which is survival and replication.
Yeah.
And you're artificially satisfying that desire to replicate through porn, and that's going to cause then beliefs are going to be even more fundamental due to the sort of stuff involved with it.
Yeah.
And that's going to mean that it's going to be even harder for you to stop watching it if you do want to. And that's a big thing. People don't even realise it's a problem. They think it's just okay.
Yeah.
But the amount that guys will talk about porn compared to
it's because they start so young and the young mind is so impressionable.
Yeah, it's still very plastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, for that to go... And so let's say, the average thing is 12, 13, 14. That's about average. And then a lad of that age is all their mates are doing it. So, and they've got all these reference points, from society that are telling them it's okay.
Yeah.
And then you can't actually comprehend the fact that it's not. And then you get to a stage where you actually do the personal growth and go, yeah, actually, this is pretty fucked up. And you deep the actual consequences it has. And then, you actually take the personal growth to go, no, this is not happening anymore. But yeah, that requires a lot. And a lot of people never do that, and they're just stuck in this sort of loop, this feedback loop, where they're just constantly doing it, therefore reinforcing the belief. And like, it's like any neurological pathway in your mind. The more you do it, any habit, the more you do it, the more fundamental and sort of sustained the pathway is going to be, and therefore the harder it is to stop. That's why addiction is such an issue for people. And then it's mad that it kind of like, I wouldn't say that's wholly to blame. Obviously there are societal factors as well, but if that was removed, a lot of these issues would to some extent be mitigated.
But I remember being sat on the school bus on the way to school, and the boys, there was such a pressure for them to watch porn.
On the bus?
No, but
Right on the bus.
no, but they would just talk to their mates, and you'd hear them talking, and they'd say, "Do you watch porn? Do you watch porn?" And if they were brave enough to say no,
What? You don't watch porn?
And you would never.
That's true.
But it would be the opposite with girls.
exactly, yeah.
Girls don't talk about
true,
it. Girls don't talk about it, and it would
That
be
is so
strange in
true.
a conversation to say that you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because for boys, most of them are lying, well, if they're not, they feel the need to lie, to say they are for the pressure, but girls will.
Yeah.
Will say no, even if they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
I think like it is just such a massive societal issue, and I think sort of governmental bodies or sort of education bodies need to do more, because the sex education is fucking appalling.
But I think that this is a problem
100%.
because
Wow.
we had sex education was done by obviously
The
through
teacher.
biology
Yeah.
and then through PSHE, which I think it should be taught together, because I think it's not. I do think that sexual education shouldn't be just about the physical act of sex. It's so much more than that.
Yeah.
And I think sex education should include, a healthy relationship, and it shouldn't just be like communicate. And if they show that
Talk
T
to each
video,
other.
did you have to watch the T video?
You will watch
Yeah.
the TV video.
It's educational, but they can't just show that.
No.
Well, that's not a scapegoat for sex education, is it?
It can't just be
TV
like,
video.
we did sex education for a term and that was it.
I
If
don't.
that's not
It's an
enough.
I
ongoing
only
conversation.
vividly
Yeah.
remember doing one sex education.
See, ours was very much
Weirdly.
like, this is what sex is. And then also, it's a bit about periods.
But they only talk as well. Also, they only talk about sex between a male and female.
That's also
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
nothing
I
about any
never-
other kind of
I-
sex.
I
Because then it makes a
never
lot of
thought about
people
that.
think that sex has to involve penetration when it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's so true, because I went to a girls' school for 5 years, and literally the sex education we had, the one lesson I so vividly remember is just the classic learning how to
This is what sex
We
is.
have to do that.
Put a condom on
That
the
is,
banana.
and that was it.
Yeah.
I had never even thought that they didn't even touch female sex, and that's really bad. Because also, the percentage of that room
At a
who are
girls' school
probably
as well,
not
there's no boys
straight,
that even target.
not straight, is probably higher than you think, and some people obviously haven't come out. So and that it is not out there. The education fees, it must be so hard. It must be so hard.
And that's even more isolating for them people as well, because
Yeah.
they're going to think, oh, this sort of authority figure is now telling me this is the only sort of sex that exists. And therefore that's going to have some sort of effect on you mentally, especially if you are not come out yet. You're going to be like, okay, that's that affects your ability to come out, because you're going to think that like this isn't normal.
Yeah. Actually, going to sex education, when do you think it's the right age to start introducing it into curriculum? Because I know that some people are.
Yeah, that is the thing.
It's being introduced into primary school, and obviously some parents are very, and also,
I remember, I think I did in year 6, and then my sister, they started with her in year 4, 3 or 4.
I do think that so many issues can be solved with just open communication.
That's the thing. Because also children, obviously sex is not something they're hearing about. So when they do first learn about it, they obviously get excited.
What's that thing we've been kept from? Yeah, what's
It's
this?
forbidden secret.
And that makes it, but I think a lot of like you said, a lot of young boys, their first ever experience of what sex is, like you said, is through porn.
Yeah.
Which is so negative. And I think if you actually educate people about what sex is and what safe sex is, that would, before you reach the age where you're kind of, it's only stigmatised if you make it stigmatised.
But then I guess though, there's a worry that if you're teaching children about sex when they're 6,
Yeah, I think that's
they have
lines,
10 years till they're legally gonna practice it. Mm-hmm. So why?
It's
Like,
a
then it's
Are
like,
they gonna
would
be?
they be?
Are you
wanting to
encouraging
earlier
them
than
to
they
want
would
to
have
try
done
it?
otherwise?
Yeah.
the one thing I do really remember though, because there's also the education on female periods and things like that. What what changes we go through as young adults. And even I so vividly remember the lesson we had about periods. It was split, so the girls had it on periods and the boys had it on their just, I don't know.
Yeah,
We had the
boys and girls in different rooms. Yeah.
So important to know about the other sex.
Don't really know.
Because I will. It's so frustrating when, and I know they can't, but no, men will never know what it's like to have a period, like literally bleed every month. Like many girls experience it differently.
Yeah, but also I think a lot of men don't know that actually having a period is so much more than literally just physically bleeding.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's a package, and like it's I still stand by the fact that it's should be perceived as the same way as an illness. If you're starting a period, you've got the pains, you're feeling ill, you should just be able to leave work, just like any other illness.
Yeah, and just
because it happens monthly does not mean it's any less
and
significant.
just because it might not affect some women, I know like some of my friends it's debilitating.
Yeah.
And a lot of girls, they're in bed all day, hot water bottle, in pain.
Mine was at the start.
And people
100%.
don't understand because even some other women are, they don't understand because theirs are different. And I think
everyone's is different, and that's it. It's just when it is so it can be so extreme, and it's like, it's when, for example, I had netball practice. And I was like, Dad, I just really cannot go. And his response to me was, all girls go for it, which first of all isn't true, obviously. Second of all, all go through it, just, stiff upper lip, just get on with it.
Typical
and I'm like,
isn't it?
I literally
for a
can't.
man to tell you that who doesn't
It's
understand
so frustrating.
Because also it's not like your mood swings can be like so drastic. Your body physically changes, you're more likely to bloat.
Yeah.
You're achy, you're sore, your skin can break out, even your hair can change, it can get greasier.
Yeah.
Or drier or whatever, and it affects so many
It's
people.
just so restricting of your life.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact that I brought it up because it's only the girls that learnt about it. The boys went off and did something else.
So
I'm like,
no
that's
clue what it's all about.
I remember we got taken into a room,
important,
shown what a pad was, a tampon.
Yeah.
The boys who knew what they were doing.
No,
It was taken away,
They should know.
bust off somewhere
They
else.
should 100% know what it feels like.
Yeah.
Or not feels like, it should just know the
because
information
then
they need to know.
it's like that typical thing where like you mention a period to a guy, he goes red, he doesn't know what to say, it's awkward, he's like and it's almost like a joke where you can get out of a situation with a man by saying, I've got lady troubles. And then they're like, oh fuck, okay.
Also, the perception is disgusting as well. It's natural.
It's
because boys will be around it. They should be aware of what will be happening.
But I think in
Because
some cultures it's seen as dirt. I mean,
because
in
I
my
know
old school,
isn't it Judaism that women and men have to sleep in separate beds when she's on her period?
really?
but
And they're not allowed to.
in my
he's
old
not allowed to
school,
touch her.
we raised money to buy a toilet block for a school in a culture where if a girl was on her period, they didn't have the proper facilities. So in the school that these girls were going to, they'd have to walk 3 or 4 miles to get to a loo that they could, because
they
it was
weren't allowed to
separated.
use it.
And if you think about it,
What?
they were girls at school. And if you think about, I mean, you're going to need to go to the loo a lot more if you're on your period. The time it would take you to walk 3-4 miles
And then all the way back.
that's going to take so much time out of your education. So we raised money to have a loo block built in the school that could accommodate these girls, but it shouldn't have to be.
But also, I think that linking back to lost education, I think that all sandwich tiles should be free.
Yeah, that's a period
because
policy.
I know that girls miss school because they cannot afford to constantly use pads, and they just think they need to stay at home and use wet towels and things. It's such a problem, and Scotland are doing the right thing by
I was
making
thinking, was
it
there not
free.
VAT on tampons?
It's a luxury technically. It was a luxury.
A luxury?
Yeah, it was.
I mean, it's interesting that I think now it's good. I mean, so we're in a college in Durham, and the welfare team does provide tampons and pads, which is great.
Have you seen now? I can't remember what supermarket it is, but if you go to like the reception area,
Money Morrison's, I
maybe,
think.
Yeah, I think
and you
it's
say
Morrison's,
like
Ask for Sarah
Sarah or Sandy or something, they'll give you like
Sandy,
pads
Oh really?
of like
Yeah.
tampons and things you need. No
And I
question
think
about that.
also, even if you're homeless,
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And there's no safe place for you to effectively.
That's so true.
I mean,
Yeah.
let alone wash, but also, you know, have a safe space that you can, you know,
Yeah.
put a tampon in, put a pad, like,
Because
in
they're
your
not
underwear.
cheap, really, if you're...
No, and if you don't have an actual area,
Exactly.
if you're in your own home, you have that space and you have that privacy. If you're living on the streets, you're so much more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, what can you even do in that situation? Like, none of your basic human needs are being met, let alone, you know, being able to sort stuff like that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of, I don't know if you've seen, but in a lot of places like service stations, on the back of the doors in the loos, they have a lot of ads to sponsor
Yeah.
companies that help refugees who are in refugee camps and who have no access.
I've seen that, to give them sort of sanitary
Yeah.
products, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I just remember, like, you know, when you go to service station toilets and they would have the little, like, machines where you
Yeah.
sign up.
Yeah.
And
I've
then
never
it's
seen
like
anyone use
£1
that.
for a tampon.
So
It's
expensive.
like...
For one.
Yeah.
Because they took the piss, that you shouldn't cost money for that. It's a human need.
Yeah.
It's
It's not a luxury, that's such bullshit, like what?
Because then you do get companies that sell things like pads and tampons and they make them like weirdly like fancy for no reason.
Yeah.
And that's why they charge so much for them. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You just need to buy a minimum.
I think if you want to buy ones that are, if you get scented ones, whatever, but you know what I mean.
You have the right to do that.
You
I
can
think,
pay for that, but I think there
should
should be
be.
just basic pads
Yeah.
and tampons available to people.
especially as it's like condoms and stuff like that's free. So
family
it's
planning clinics that give them help.
literally it should be another.
And that's a choice as opposed to, like, you
This
know,
is literally cannot do
something
anything.
that's needed.
That's so
really
true. I didn't even think of that.
That's
yeah.
really true, actually. How it is good, I think, that we do have access to even condoms and stuff. Like,
And pregnancy tests.
Yeah.
So they're actually in our post room here. There's the welfare have a little table where there's free pregnancy tests, lube, condoms, and pads and tampons, which I think should be
100%.
That should be everywhere. There shouldn't be one specific place within one institution.
Yeah.
It should be, you know, freely available.
Yeah.
You know, why they're spending money on PPE that's being fucked? Like, why don't they spend some of that billions of pounds on some actually essential shit, you know?
Yeah.
Honestly. But yeah, I think we've covered a lot of stuff, and I think a lot of our listeners...
Yeah, there's quite a lot of stuff.
It's going to be good. I think a lot of our listeners are going to gain so much value from this, and having your girls' insight on these topics has been invaluable, really. But I
So
think
thank you for having us.
it's been good,
Yes,
yeah.
definitely.
Thanks for being open. And
That's
being
all right. What would you,
issues.
if you had to say one sort of summary point, I asked the lads who came on last week about this as well, like, if you had one message to the world, what would it be and why? What would be your message? If you had to put it on the billboard that millions of people would
Oh
see
my
you.
god.
Be
no.
open, be kind, and try and listen.
Just listen.
I like that.
Yeah.
Which I don't want to say cliche, but just
Women support women.
Women in STEM!
Women in STEM.
Women in STEM!
honestly just.
Right.
Stay up by
So I
that.
literally don't want to be that person.
Be
but
that
just
person.
Yeah.
Honestly, just
Be
be
kind.
yourself. Be yourself.
Be yourself.
Be the
Never,
truest version
never
of
be
yourself.
influenced. I mean, obviously, if your true self is great, be yourself. Obviously, there are limitations to that.
Yeah.
Now you've made me aware of that.
I was going to say,
Like
be
you
yourself,
said,
but accept when you can improve.
I think
Yeah.
that
Well, there is growth.
That really is so true. If you
that'll
know
yeah.
your faults. No.
I know. Because that very old, you know, when here in primary school, just literally just treat others like you'd like to be treated
Yeah.
back. Literally, that is just go through your life with that mindset, because you'll get far. Just be kind, love people.
Yeah.
Like I said, listen.
So true.
Listening is so important. Yeah, that's what it is.
Two ears and one mouth.
Yeah.
My wisdom.
Your wisdom. As a
Tell us
woman.
about physics.
Study physics.
The Hadron Collider.
More women in STEM.
Join me.
Be my friend.
You're a fellow woman in STEM.
Do you know how to do a Rubik's Cube?
I do not, but we're looking for one.
Exactly.
No, I think just look out for others.
Yeah.
You're not. I know
Not alone
it feels
in this
like
world.
it feels like in life, you know, obviously you feel like everything's about you.
Yeah.
It's not. everyone's just as worried about themselves.
Can I just say, this was like very much like in spectacles. Like, you know when he's like,
Yeah, he's
this is like, this
We
is
are a
like,
community, we are
we're in
individuals.
bees in a hive. And it's like, it's kind of true.
Hive mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't go the political route, but literally, just be kind.
Also, don't ever be afraid to ask for help from people if you're struggling about stuff.
Yes. Be open. As you know, I know you can be uncomfortable with it, but try and be as
So I
open
need
as
to
you
find
can.
this word now, because this word, and it's basically like everyone thinks they're their own, like living their own story. It's like you forget
Main
other
character.
people. No, it's like
Main character syndrome.
It's like you forget that everyone around you
Has
their own lives.
Yeah.
And it's like you're gonna think everyone in
Yeah.
life. Like if you're having a bad day and you're walking down the street, you might think everyone's staring at you. They're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Spotlight
are
syndrome.
For the
Yeah.
exact same thing.
Spotlight syndrome.
Also, you are going to be that side character in somebody else's story. You're going to be that NPC.
You're the NPC in someone's life.
So, you know,
Be a good NPC.
yeah, you're going to be an NPC, be a good one. Thank you for listening.
Bloody hell. So did you have that word, or are we gonna?
No, I just
We will find the word and put it in the show notes. Well, this has been a really, really good episode, and we'll probably get you girls on another time.
Wait. No, this is not.
Drum roll.
That was not.
Good place to end. Thank you very much. This has been Alex and
Bella.
Abby.
Mariella.
on the Lawless Podcast, and we'll see you next week.